أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Inshallah, we're going to pick up today with the legendary stories of the prophets alayhimu salatu wassalam. Side note, this is your humble and respectable orator Muhammad Israel. And of course, we have completed a number of stories pertaining to the prophets alayhimu salatu wassalam. Adam alayhi salatu wassalam, and covered also Enoch or Idris alayhi salatu wassalam, the Prophet Nuh alayhi salatu wassalam or Noah, the Prophet Hud alayhi salatu wassalam. We have also covered the Prophet Salih alayhi salatu wassalam and the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. We have covered the Prophet Ismail or Ishmael, Prophet Abraham also is acceptable, as we had covered in that video. So we want to make sure the both versions or versions of pronunciation are present. So we have Isaac or Ishaq and Yaqub and Jacob. So we've also covered the story of Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and covered the Prophet Lut alayhi salatu wassalam, the Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salatu wassalam. We have covered the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, the Prophet Ayyub alayhi salatu wassalam. We've covered the story of Dhul Kifl alayhi salatu wassalam, and the story, the dwellers of Ras. We have also covered the story of the people mentioned in Surah Yasin. We have covered the story of Prophet Jonah or Yunus alayhi salatu wassalam. And we'll be picking up today from page number 190. Please do feel free to subscribe and like, and the algorithm, whatever they consider to be important algorithm. But also we want to mention the legendary military series of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam's military career. There is the career itself, the Madani period, which is a military career of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We can say that the Madani period, well, the conclusion of the Meccan period begins with a military, physical military intelligence operation. But we will perhaps at some point get to that. But that until the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is considered the military career of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his legacy is the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, his military legacy, obviously that is, which we have covered, and his military government, which is the era of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, has also been covered, and that is the era of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, and it completes with the era beginning of Sayyidina Uthman ibn al-Affan, and that indeed is the legendary military empire of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And at this point, we are working on the legendary military ideology of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the era of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. So now this would be chapter 15. This is the story of Musa and Harun, or Aaron, Moses and Aaron. And of course, just as another side note, out of all of the prophets mentioned in the Quran, the story of Musa is most popular. It is not the story of Joseph, which is known as the best story that the Quran brings, but it is indeed by far most popular, and there are several reasons for that. However, we're just going to have to read the text as we've been doing with the story of Musa, and we will circle back around to perhaps the rationale behind why it is the absolute most popular story in the Quran, notorious for its length. So this portion of this series will definitely take the vast majority. But let's start moving on. Section 1, the story of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. The Pharaoh who ruled Egypt was a tyrant who oppressed the descendants of Jacob, alayhi salatu wassalam, known as the children of Israel or Banu Israel. He used every means to demean and disgrace them. They were kept in bondage and forced to work for him for small wages or nothing at all. Under this system, the people obeyed and worshipped the Pharaoh, and the ruling class carried out his orders, thereby authorizing his tyranny and crazy whims. The Pharaoh wanted the people to obey him only and to believe in the gods of his invention. Perhaps during that time there were many classes of people who did not believe in or practice polytheism. However, they kept this to themselves and outwardly did as they were expected to do without revolting or revealing themselves to anyone whatsoever. The successive dynamics came to Egypt and assumed that they were gods or their representatives or spokesmen. So, successive dynasties, excuse me. So that's why, not dynamics, but dynasties. So, in this manner, successive dynasties came to Egypt after one pharaoh after another under this system and assumed that they were gods or their representatives or spokesmen. They were spokesmen or representatives of gods. Years passed, and the despotic king, who was ordered by the Egyptians, ruled Egypt. So, not adopted but adored. So, there's another issue. I think this would be, well, we have some typos in the text. We'll leave it at that. So let's try to move along even. This king saw the children of Israel multiplying and prospering. He heard them talking about a vague vision that one of the Israel's sons would dethrone the Pharaoh of Egypt. Perhaps this vision was only a daydream that persisted within the hearts of the persecuted minority, or perhaps it was a prophecy from their books. Another tradition states that it was the Pharaoh himself who had the vision. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu narrated, and I quote, Pharaoh saw in his vision a fire which came from Jerusalem and burned the houses of the Egyptians in all cups and all cups. So it burned the houses of the Egyptians and it burned all cups who were the rulers and did not do harm to the children of Israel. When he woke up, he was horrified. He then gathered his priests and magicians and asked them about this vision. They said, this means a boy will be born of them, and the Egyptian people will perish at his hands. That is why Pharaoh commanded that all male children of the children of Israel be killed. End quote. Either way, this vision reached the ears of the Pharaoh. He then issued a decree to slay any male child that would be born to the children of Israel, so any newborns. This was carried out until the experts of economics said to Pharaoh, and I quote, "The aged of the children of Israel die, and the young are slaughtered. This will lead to their annihilation. As a result, Pharaoh will lose the manpower of those who work for him, those whom he has enslaved, and their women whom he exploits. It is better to regulate this procedure by initiating the following policy. Males should be slaughtered in 1 year, but spared to live the next year." End quote. Pharaoh found that solution to be safer economically. Moses' mother was pregnant with Aaron, alayhi salam, in a year that boys were to be spared. Thus she gave birth to the child publicly and safely. During a year in which boys were to be slain, she gave birth to Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. Thus his birth caused her much terror. She was afraid he would be slain, so she nursed him secretly. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu reveals in Surah number 28, ayahs number 2 through 7, and I quote, "These are the ayahs of the manifest book that makes clear truth from falsehood, good from evil. We recite to you some of the news of Musa and Pharaoh in truth. For a people who believe, meaning those who believe in this Quran and in the oneness of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Verily Pharaoh exalted himself in the land and made its people sects, weakening, oppressing a group, meaning the children of Israel among them, killing their sons and letting their females live. Verily he was a mufsideen, which means iblisi type, those who commit great sins and crimes, oppressions, they're tyrants, they're bullies, and they practically think they can get away with it." End quote. And we wish to do a favor for those who were weak and oppressed in the land, and to make them rulers, and to make them the inheritors, and to establish them in the land. And we let Pharaoh and Haman and their host receive from them that which they feared. And we inspired the mother of Musa, saying, "Suckle him," but meaning suckle Musa. "But when you fear for him, then cast him into the river, and fear not nor grieve. Verily we shall bring him back to you, and shall make him one of our messengers." End quote. This is what was inspired to the mother of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. And again, it's in Surah number 28, ayahs number 2 through 7. No sooner had the divine revelation finished than she obeyed the sacred and merciful call. She was commanded to make a basket for Musa. So to make the basket, and she made that basket. She nursed him, put him into the basket, then went to the shore of the Nile and threw the basket. Actually, again, the basket is not 100% basket. So we have to remember that, and we will get to what else to the basket pertain when we redo the series, because there's a more detailed one. And threw it into the water. Her mother's heart, the most merciful one in the world, grieved, or his mother's heart is what it's supposed to say, as she threw her son into the Nile. However, she was aware that Allah Jalla Jalaluhu was much more merciful to Musa alayhi salatu wassalam than to her. That he Jalla Jalaluhu loved Prophet Musa more than her. Allah was his Lord and the Lord of the Nile. Hardly had the basket touched the water of the Nile than Allah Jalla Jalaluhu issued his command to the waves to be calm and gentle, while carrying the child would one day be a prophet. She instructed her daughter to follow the course of the basket and to report back to her. As the daughter followed the floating basket along the river bank, she found herself right in the palace grounds and saw what was unfolding before her eyes. Inshallah, we will stop it here and pick up from page number 193. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.